Welcome to the 700 Club, and thanks so much for joining with us. Israel is planning swift retaliation for Iran's missile strike. The plan could include attacking Iran's nuclear facilities, which President Biden says he will not support.
Meanwhile, Israeli ground forces fighting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon suffered their first combat losses. Paul Strand has more from Jerusalem.
Israeli officials pledged a swift retaliation for Iran's missile attack on Tuesday. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has met with top military and civilian leaders to mull over options. Targets could include Iran's oil rigs or even its nuclear facilities as it moves closer to producing nuclear weapons. President Biden was asked if he'd support strikes against those nuclear facilities.
The answer is no. We'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do.
Biden said Israel must respond proportionally. After the United Nations Secretary General failed to immediately and specifically condemn Iran for its attack, Israel's foreign minister accused Antonio Guterres of being deeply anti-Israel. Katz declared the UN chief persona non grata in Israel and banned him from entering the country. Wednesday, after Katz's comments, Guterres made this statement.
I again strongly condemn yesterday's massive missile attack by Iran on Israel.
At that same Security Council meeting, Iran's ambassador declared Tuesday's missile attack on Israel a necessary and proportionate response to what he called Israel's continued terrorist aggressive acts. Those include wiping out most of the top leaders of Iran's proxy army, Hezbollah, booby-trapping thousands of Hezbollah's beepers and walkie-talkies to explode, and IDF ground troops invading southern Lebanon to clear out the terror group. 8 of those troops died in skirmishes with Hezbollah fighters this week, their bodies evacuated soon after. But the mission goes on, searching out and destroying terrorist tunnels, infrastructure, and weapons hidden all over southern Lebanon. Iran's president warned that if Israel escalates its war against Hezbollah or comes after Iran itself, they will hit back much harder. Israel's ambassador to the UN says Iran's massive attack already proves its genocidal aims.
This was not just an escalation. It was a direct assault on our very existence.
Almost 10 million Israelis took to shelters as the missiles hurled toward their nation, but for many, faith conquered fear.
We were not afraid. There's someone from above that is watching over us. God is guarding the people of Israel. We have nothing to fear.
Israelis are now observing the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. The high holidays are always a time of heightened alert, even more so in this time of war. Paul Strand, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, today is Rosh Hashanah, and I want to take a moment and just reflect where we are in history. You look at the current conflict, and its truth has been stood on its head, where you have in the hallways of the UN, in the main Security Council, some kind of claim that Israel is committing terror attacks. And it just seems to be absolutely horrific to me that that would even be entertained at that level. This all started on October 7th. It all started with Hamas with a brutal attack on civilians in Israel. Then you add to it Hezbollah raining rockets down on soccer fields for children, and you go, who's to blame here? Israel is not to blame. They are responding to attacks on their sovereign territory. As a nation recognized by the UN, they have every right to defend themselves. And the Jewish people, going back to the San Remo resolution of 1924, you look back at this history and you go, well, they have a right of self-determination. And they have that in their ancestral homeland, which is Israel. We need to stand with Israel. Now, I've been asked, are we in the end times? And my answer is, we're getting closer. This is yet another birth pang. And in that birth pang, we need to look to the Bible. What is our source of inspiration? What is our source of comfort in these dire days as ballistic missiles are being targeted at Israel, as terrorism is being targeted at Israel? Well, here's this week's Torah portion. It's the end of the Torah cycle because it's Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. So this Saturday, this is the passage that's going to be read in every synagogue around the world. And it's the Song of Moses. And it concludes with this one verse. As Christians, we need to recognize this song was absolutely instrumental and foremost in the minds of the disciples and the apostles, those who wrote the New Testament. The Apostle Paul quoted this song several times in the book of Acts and especially in the book of Romans. But here's the last verse. In this, the rabbinical teaching needs to echo throughout Christians around the world today, because the rabbis say the Song of Moses is a history of humanity. That when you read that psalm, you see the entire history laid out by Moses, the prophet of God. Here is how he concludes it. It's from Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 43. Rejoice, O Gentiles, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants and render vengeance to his adversaries. He will provide atonement for his land and his people. It's this verse that caused the Apostle Paul to say, and all Israel will be saved. In these trying times, let's keep this in mind. Israel will be saved, and it will be saved because Israel is the apple of God's eye. In other news, a strike that's shut down 14 major ports in America is entering the third day. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
Thanks, Gordon. About 50,000 dock workers are on the picket lines, closing down shipping ports along the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico. Economic experts predict the strikes could cost the economy as much as $5 billion a day, and they predict crimps in the supply chain will create shortages and higher prices for consumers. There are already reports of panic buying. Some stores are running out of toilet paper, even though it's made in the U.S. or comes in by rail from Canada and Mexico. Items that might become scarce include perishables like bananas, cherries, as well as cocoa, sugar, and imported wine. The dock workers are seeking higher wages and protection from automation. Well, the blue-collar vote will play an important role in the 2024 presidential election, a major reason why unions may not be the reliable vote the Democrats have depended on in the past. CBN's chief political analyst David Brody has more.
The presidential fight in battleground states has a number of key storylines. High on the list, the union vote.
This is the first time in decades, just got endorsed by the rank and file members of the Teamsters, which I happen to think is amazing. That was a surprise.
An unexpected 60% of the union expressed support for Donald Trump over Kamala Harris. There are a number of reasons, including his administration's economic populist success, a new pledge to not tax their overtime, and promises to protect their jobs from cheap migrant labor. Trucker J.W. Payne, a Teamster for 14 years, adds another.
The Democrat has totally left the working man and woman, the blue-collar workers. They're more like, we want to go spend time with George Clooney up in Hollywood and get that caviar versus sit down and have banana pudding and also bologna cheese sandwiches for lunch.
That mindset seems to be at the heart of the change. More union members now see Democrats as the party of the elites, out of touch with traditional family values. My, how times have changed. In 1968, nearly half, 46% of Americans who lived in union households identified as Democrat. By 2016, that number had shrunk 11 points to just 37%. When Trump came on the scene, another drop, now down to 33%. Steve Gruber is a former union member from Michigan.
When you go to big union states like Michigan or Nevada, there's this erosion of support. I mean, they're leaving in droves because they know the economy was better under Donald Trump.
VP Harris has some union backing, at least in the leadership ranks. Sean Fain, head of the big United Auto Workers Union, got a prime slot during the Democrat convention.
Kamala Harris is one of us. She's a fighter for the working class.
Union Democrats say they like the legislation passed during the Biden administration that they believe will create jobs for them in construction and manufacturing. They also say Trump benefits the billionaire class. Plus, as president, he packed the courts and government agencies with anti-union judges and appointees. Harris made sure her first stop after joining the presidential race happened in Michigan at the UAW.
You may not be a union member. You better thank a union member for the 5-day work week. You better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
She'll be doing the thanking if she can do as well as Biden did with union members in 2020. Biden won 57% of the union vote in the key Rust Belt states, compared to Trump's 40%. Union voters typically make up about 20% of the electorate. That's about 1 in every 5 voters. And there are roughly 2.7 million union members in those battleground states alone. Former Michigan union member Tom Norton, who comes from a family of union members, thinks she could be in for a surprise this time around.
This is the first step of a union really starting to shift to the Republican Party. As long as he can finish the job of showing how businesses and unions can work together, we're going to have a very fundamentally different and stronger Republican Party that's going to have old-fashioned blue dog Democrats with people that represent themselves more like Reaganites, and it's going to be a very strong party.
It's all part of a shifting electorate that makes this presidential race even more intriguing. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
You could reform. Moving now to the southeast, where search and rescue efforts continue. It's been nearly a week since Hurricane Helene caused historic flooding across the region. It's become the second deadliest storm this century, with at least 190 people killed and hundreds still missing. CBN's Jenna Browder reports.
Sheer devastation in the southeast. Entire communities decimated from the historic flooding caused by Hurricane Helene. The death toll still climbing and hundreds still missing, including John Norwood's fiance.
We looked outside and there was a 30-foot tall wall of water and rocks and tree debris just coming at us, and it knocked the house straight down with all of us in it. She went one way and I went the other. Last thing as I do her was I love you. And that was the last time I saw her.
Their entire neighborhood in Marion, North Carolina was wiped out. John was rescued on this stretcher, his legs crushed. They're still looking for Julie.
She is loved by so many. She's so strong.
Lauren Meininger says they're still searching for her mother-in-law.
She's taken on children that aren't hers, and she's just the strongest woman I know, so it's hard not to hold on to that hope. I pray every day, every second that she's found and she's safe.
After hitting Florida's Gulf Coast last week as a Category 4 hurricane, Helene moved through Georgia, the Carolinas, and Tennessee, drenching the area with unprecedented rain. Days later, many are still stranded without power, cell service, or running water. Patricia Miranda is using creek water to flush her toilets and wash clothes.
We don't have nowhere to go.
President Biden has ordered 1,000 troops to the region. They join the more than 6,000 National Guard troops from 12 states already there. Yesterday, he surveyed the damage from the air, flying over the hardest hit areas of western North Carolina.
I'm here to say the United States, the nation, has your back. The nation has your back. We're not leaving till you're back on your feet.
CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground in Asheville, passing out water, food boxes, hygiene kits, and other supplies.
It's particularly important that we be here because due to the nature of this storm, it knocked out water, it knocked out electricity, it knocked out cell phones. There are an amazing number of people that are trapped up in the mountains or who have lost everything, and it's not being able to be covered because there's so little cell coverage that the word can't get out. So it's critical that we get that message out.
Keep our team in your prayers and keep the people of North Carolina in your prayers. They really desperately need it right now.
Operation Blessing is also at work in Valdosta, Georgia. Volunteers are serving hot food in the parking lot of Anchor Church and helping homeowners recover from the devastation. At Belinda Cobb's damaged home, they're cleaning up debris and putting a tarp on the roof. And giving her comfort as she breaks down retelling the story of praying on the phone with her son, whose path was blocked by fallen debris.
When he said, "Mom, I don't think I'm going to make it," we prayed again before he got out of the car. And I know God lifted that tree or either gave him the strength to do it. I don't know which, but basically it was God either way. I'm sorry, I'm not doing very good.
Feel like you need a hug.
Son, I'm so nasty. I've not had a shower in days.
I'm nasty. Are you kidding me?
You're so sweet.
And Operation Blessing's international relief team is also on the ground in North Carolina. This is the first time they've been deployed to the United States to help disaster relief efforts. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Lives forever change after that fast-moving storm and long-lasting destruction. Gordon?
The devastation is horrific. It reminds me of a storm all the way back in 1969, Camille, that wiped out huge portions of the mountainous region of Virginia, Nelson County, Buena Vista, places that I went as a child, and there's still markers showing the flood levels in Buena Vista, a memorial for generations to come, just how bad it got. And when you look at Asheville, what a beautiful town, and to see the devastation, it just breaks your heart. We want to be there for people. We want to help them very tangibly. Right now, the need is food and water. It's shelter. It's tarps on roofs. It's search and rescue. It's all the above. And the needs are absolutely overwhelming. If you want to be a part of the relief effort, and whether it's giving out water or giving out hugs, we're doing it in your name. And if you want to be a part, all you have to do is call us. 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can write to us at CBN Center. Just put OB, Disaster Relief, in the memo line of a check. You can go to cbn.com. There's a place that you can designate your gift to Operation Blessing. You can text OBDR to 71777. Either way, do it right now and say, yes, I want to be a part. 1-800-700-7000. Well, Israel is known for its innovative technologies that provide solutions to problems all over the world. Now one Israeli company is taking on a frustrating issue: traffic. Paul Strand reports from Tel Aviv on a system that's aimed at clearing traffic jams and improving safety.
Arg, traffic, everybody hates it. But one Israeli company has come up with a system to make traffic flow much more smoothly, that can turn lights exactly when needed, warn drivers away from potential accidents, and unsnarl rush hour commutes.
It's an invention of No Traffic, headquartered here in Tel Aviv. When the company is enlisted to take over a community's traffic system, No Traffic puts these sensors at intersections that then connect to sophisticated artificial intelligence.
And from that point on, the system works by itself autonomously.
CEO Tal Kreisler says these artificial eyes then watch movements in and around those intersections.
Private vehicles, buses, pedestrians, bicycles, scooters, whatever.
AI then proceeds to orchestrate traffic flow in order to keep it moving safely and quickly. That's led to amazing improvements in limiting the time motors are held up.
We've managed to cut dramatic amount. We're talking about 70% of delay time.
With vehicles more computerized than ever, this new system will be able to communicate directly with individual drivers. That could lead to a warning about a pedestrian potentially in a blind spot about to cross in front of them. Another safety element is the system's ability to gauge if an oncoming vehicle might run a red light. If so, it can alert nearby drivers while also changing other lights to red at that intersection to prevent collisions. When accidents do happen, it can immediately contact first responders, then give them green lights all the way.
About 70% of fatality cases happening in the first hour after the accident. So literally every minute that we are saving, literally saving life.
Research shows an updated traffic system is sorely needed worldwide. That's because an additional 90 million cars hit the road each year. Traffic congestion increases 12% annually. As for those lights that hold you up block after block,
the way that we are operating them is remained the same for the last 100 years or so.
And there's little to no connection from intersection to intersection.
Most of the intersections out there are not connected to anything. They just run by themselves.
With No Traffic sensors and artificial intelligence saturating a city's traffic grid, it enables each intersection to communicate with all the others. That allows the system to make split-second decisions to keep traffic moving. These sensors are designed to withstand the wear and tear that comes from constantly being out in the elements. Ian Fountain and his lab techs ensure each piece can stand up to the most extreme conditions.
We put them in the ovens, we heat them, we cool them, we add humidity.
In Fahrenheit, that's a range from -31 to a super hot 167 degrees. Now that a number of states like Florida, Arizona, and California utilize the system, No Traffic has found that in a mid-sized city, Its platform has reduced waiting times by as much as 50% or more. That efficiency can remove around 26,000 tons of CO2 emissions each year. That's like the pollution from 5,700 cars simply vanishing. To Chrysler, it's all positive transformation.
Improving our life, reducing emissions, generating massive amounts of time that we can now spend with our loved ones. And I think this is one of the things that we are the most proud of, like literally transforming the world to a better place.
The atmosphere and attitudes in Israel make it easier for an innovative system like No Traffics to be created here. Innovators are welcomed and cherished. Smart forward thinking is valued and rewarded. And Israelis see themselves as people who can solve global problems, both large and small, who can dream up solutions not yet seen, but waiting to be dreamed. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from Tel Aviv.
What an obvious contrast between Israel and its wonderful culture of innovation, the startup nation, just what's happening there, the innovation that's coming out. It's being a light to the nations. And you look at the contrast. What is Hamas doing for the world? It's building terror tunnels. It's building rockets. It's trying to kill people. What is Hezbollah doing for the world? It's just trying to kill people. What is Iran doing for the world? It's just trying to kill people. When you see the contrast and see just how important it is for the entire world, for Israel to dwell safely, for them to be that true light of the nations that the prophet Isaiah said would happen, wonderful things can happen. It's just incredible what comes out of Israel. Now, we've got something for you. It's a new film. It's called The Genius of Israel, and it shows why culturally is Israel so innovative? What is so unique about it? It's available from CBN Films, and it's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. You can receive a DVD copy of The Genius of Israel. You can also get instant 4K streaming access. All you have to do is call us. 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to geniusofisraelfilm.com. You can also text us. Just text GENIUS to 80888. Get informed. What is so unique about this wonderful nation, its culture, its people? Why is it so blessed? This film will answer all those questions and more. It's yours for a gift of any dollar amount. So all you have to do is call us. 1-800-700-7000. Terry?
Well, we've all heard the phrase post-traumatic stress. Israelis demonstrate what's called post-traumatic growth. This tiny nation has faced war and adversity every day of its existence. Through every struggle, they emerge stronger. And it's because of the genius of Israel.
What happened on October 7th? I think nobody could even in his wildest dream think that this could happen to us. Never.
They ask people, how satisfied are you with your life?
Israel doesn't have a loneliness crisis.
But we're all part of one big tribe. And Israelis are just more connected.
So the question is why? What is Israel doing? The country's culture is undergirded by this sense that Israelis are looking out for one another.
The country needs you. It's time to serve, and that's really what it's about.
Well, ERIN Zimmerman is the writer and director of The Genius of Israel, and she's with us in studio after having spent the past few weeks and rocket fire and air raid sirens in northern Israel. So we're very glad to see you back here in the United States.
No one's happier than I am, Terry.
Timing is everything, right?
Yes.
You know, as I've watched all of this unfold in the news, October 7th was so jarring, as was 9/11 for the United States. But a unity comes out of those moments, a loyalty comes out of those moments. Sometimes over time that fades, but it doesn't seem to be so with Israel. It's like these moments seem to bring the country together. People stand together. You celebrate and commemorate issues that have happened years ago, decades ago, and you still stand strong. What's the difference, do you think?
I'll tell you, the Jewish people are the most tribal people that I have ever seen. And while there is division, and while we have seen it in these protests, which continue every week in Tel Aviv, the division is more against the government itself. There are people, it's not unlike America, people on both sides of the spectrum, and it's a very sharp division. However, the Israeli people among themselves are very unified. I don't know personally, I know a lot of people. I personally don't know one that is a personal acquaintance of a hostage, and yet they care about these hostages as if they were their own family. They are actively sad and grieving over these hostages. They have this inner need to go help people, and I saw that firsthand. I was there on October 7th, and I saw immediately my film crew. I told my costume designer, she was my inspiration for this project because she's also a very good cook, and she immediately, the day after, October 8th, she's gathering all the women in her apartment building and they're cooking, and they don't even know who they're cooking for yet. They're just cooking mass meals for soldiers, for displaced families, and this is, and it's not just unique to her, this is all over the country, and I thought when I saw it, somebody has to document this. And of course, you know, when you say that, God's up there going, it's you.
What are you doing?
You have to document
for the next
this.
few years, right? So. You know, I want you to talk a little bit about the sense of, you're talking about this bond amongst people, but some of that, it seems to me, comes out of how Israel was reestablished as people came back. My very first trip to Israel was like in the early 70s, stayed on a kibbutz, you know, gunfire in the background, but kibbutz living generates what you're talking about, doesn't it?
Yes, and that was by necessity, because when these early settlers started coming in the late 19th century, there were so many raiders, Bedouin raiders, there was so much danger about them. They couldn't just say, I'm going to go buy my own house. They had to live communally. They had to put what they call the stockade and tower settlements, you know, the wall around it and the tower for the lookout. And so by nature, it is a very communal society. But I also think Judaism is like this. And I asked the author of this book, one of them is a Jewish person from New York, not from Israel. And I said, do you feel this same sense of community among your Jewish friends in New York? And he said, we do. It's not the whole society, but we feel it among ourselves. They are the only people on earth who have survived 2,000 years of exile. And no matter where they come from, they all have that in common, and that's what they'll tell you. Our instinct is for survival, and to survive, we have to be together, and we have to be unified, and it's very biblical.
Even when it costs, because, you know, I think of, I mean, my generation was young when Vietnam happened, and people who thought they might be enlisted were leaving for Canada and other points. But the way the military works in Ukraine, there's a sense of this is my land, these are my people, this is my responsibility. Everybody serves.
Everybody serves, and even the people who don't have to. The reservists that they were calling up who have aged out of their normal military service showed up at a rate of 140 to 150%. People were saying, look, I know I'm older, but let me do something. Even Orthodox Jews, many of whom don't normally serve, were showing up and saying, we want to serve, we want to do something. And girls, this is the one that really got me, because as a woman, if I knew I was going in the Army at 18, I'd probably have a heart attack. I just wouldn't want to. These girls are not only going into the Army, they are fighting each other for spaces in combat units. They are really proud to do it, and they're racing toward it, and it's just amazing to watch.
Talk a little bit about the concept of tikkun olam. What is that? Because it really is totally behind much of what you're talking about.
I love this. That's a Hebrew phrase meaning to repair the world, because we all know everything's wrong with the world. And for some reason, Jewish people, among all the people in the world, feel the responsibility to fix the world in as much as they can. And so they do it. And we started this film with a quote that says, you know, the Jewish people are responsible for one another, which is very heavy. It means that anytime you see a need among the Jewish people, you go meet it.
Your
and
need
that's
is my need.
Yes, and that's what this is about. But we wanted to end the film on this tikkun olam because it might sound like, oh, well, great, the Jews are only helping themselves, wonderful. But then we show what they're doing for the rest of the world. And many times for Arab countries with whom they're technically at war, they're still helping their enemies. Even Ismail Haniyeh, who was just recently departed, the head of Hamas, he's had maybe 5 relatives, I think, treated in Israeli hospitals.
Wow.
So
which are open to people needing to be treated.
They flew him in secretly, flew them in, didn't say anything about it, treated them quietly, and sent them back. Yeah.
You're working on the final installments of the Oracles of God. Talk about that. What's the project about, and what can we expect?
Okay, well, this is part of a 5-part series on the creation of the Bible. We released the first one last year, the Old Testament. Now we're working in the New Testament, and this has been the most amazing thing to see, because we're getting into Jesus and the apostles and Paul and the writers and the people who created and canonized the Bible, and were part of that
Carried the
process.
message, yeah.
Yes, but I have all these sweet young Israeli actors, and they're playing Jesus, and they're playing the apostles, and they are saying the words of the Sermon on the Mount, reenacting the Last Supper, the Lord's Prayer, the crucifixion, which will be coming up. And they are so full of questions about their characters. I was sitting in rehearsal space with them a few days ago, and they're saying, well, what about this? What about this? Why is this apostle doing this? And I was telling them Bible stories. And they said to me, wow, they looked at each other and they said, wow, why haven't we heard these stories in school? And I said, well, you wouldn't have their Christian stories.
Yes.
So it was a real joy, and they're so interested, and they get invested in these characters. And I'm just saying, okay, maybe part of the purpose of this film is not even for the film itself, but it's to be there telling them these stories and just opening them a little bit at a time, you know, so maybe they find the Messiah someday.
God's always doing more than one thing.
Yes, oh, for
More
sure.
than the very
He's doing
obvious.
10 things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, listen, friends, I want to tell you The Genius of Israel is now available from CBN Films. For your gift of any dollar amount, you can receive a DVD copy of The Genius of Israel and receive instant 4K streaming. All you have to do is call 1-800-700-7000 or go to geniusofisraelfilm.com. And then you can also text, if you prefer, GENIUS to 80888. Erin, thank you for all that you do. You bring everything that is important to us as believers alive, and it's a blessing.
Oh, thank you for all your prayers and support. We feel it.
Absolutely. Stay here till you need to go knock.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
You and my mother are both teaming up.
I'm with your mother. Okay.
Welcome back to Washington for the CBN News Break. A Kentucky church says it's celebrating a move of God during a recent Sunday service where 76 people publicly made decisions to follow Christ at Better Life Church in Moreland in late September. And more than 80 people chose to be baptized. About 50 of them spontaneously came forward after making that decision. It all happened on the final Sunday of a sermon series called Awakening. The church reports that its members invited friends and family to come hear the gospel, and 1,700 people showed up. Well, the audience for the popular streaming series The Chosen has the potential to grow exponentially in the coming years. The English-speaking video series on the life and ministry of Jesus and his disciples has gained a huge following. Now there's an effort underway to translate it into hundreds of other languages. The series is already translated into more than 50 languages. The Come and See Foundation wants to expand that to 600 translations, giving the series a far greater impact across the world. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.
Zhu Shen was born with a hole in her heart. Doctors said her heart disease combined with high fevers could cause permanent brain damage, and it might even lead to her death. Well, today, thanks to you, she's healthy and happy.
Today, it's hard to get Zishen to slow down. It's a big change from how she used to be.
She didn't have good resistance. She got really high fevers and was weak. Sometimes her body was full of tubes.
My mother said there was a hole in her heart.
Zishen often had pneumonia and had to get injections.
It was hard for nurses to give her the injections because she was so small. I couldn't stop crying. It felt like the needle was piercing my heart. Her doctor told me that her heart disease combined with pneumonia was serious. Her ongoing high fevers could cause brain damage and leave her a vegetable. Or she could die.
The Chos are poor. Mrs. Cho stays home while her husband works out of town. So Ran helps her mother take care of Zishen.
She must have heard us talking about how we couldn't save enough money for surgery.
I gave my piggy bank to my mom. I just wanted my sister to get better.
Instead, Zishen kept getting sick.
Sometimes she clenched her fist like she was fighting. It seemed like the only thing we could do was watch her die. I felt helpless.
One time, when Zishen was getting injections, a woman invited Mrs. Cho to church, where she heard about Operation Blessing. And soon, you helped make it possible for Zishen to get heart surgery.
Her immune system is so much better now, so she's developing well. She has a lot of strength to run and jump.
My little sister has changed a lot. Now she's very happy.
Because of your help, I feel that there really is a God in this world. I'm very grateful for you. You are like a light from God.
Thank you to everyone from Operation Blessing. I love you all.
That thank you and that love goes all the way from China right into your home if you're a member of the 700 Club. Whether it's in China, Western North Carolina, Valdosta, Georgia, Israel, all around the world, you're providing help and hope to people in need. We want to be there for people, and you make it possible for hands of love and compassion to be extended all around the world. If you're not a member of the 700 Club, I encourage you to join with us. It's real simple. All you have to do is pick up a phone and call us. 1-800-700-7000. Just say, I want to join the 700 Club. Now, how much is that? It's just $20 a month. That's 65 cents a day. You can also join 700 Club Gold, which is $40 a month. We have 1,000 Club. That's $1,000 a year, $84 a month. 2,500 Club is $2,500 a year, and Founder, $5,000 or more a year. At whatever level, call and join. I've got something for you. It's called Pray with Power, how to energize your prayers. It'll transform your prayer life. There's a booklet. There's also streaming access to teachings. Well, Charlene, Aaron, and I get together and talk about how our prayer lives were transformed by praying the scriptures. I want you to have it. It's yours when you join, so call now. 1-800-700-7000. Terry, over to you.
Pam's real father was a murderer. Her foster dad was a sexual predator. For years, Pam tried to drink away her pain, and when that failed, she thought suicide was her only way out.
I remember I ran up and down the street just over and over and over again.
It was a hot summer day in rural Alabama when an 8-year-old Pam Whitehead learned her father had brutally killed her mother. He was later sentenced to 50 years.
Just screaming and running up and down the street.
8 years later, Pam would see another violent man go to prison. The foster father who had taken her and her younger siblings in after her own father went to prison. It was Pam who reported him to police for beating and sexually abusing them.
The anxiety that was within me, honestly, I could not hold down a lot of food. I was so scared. That 10-year-old girl that I see in that picture, so scared.
Pam was 11 when she figured out alcohol made life bearable.
I liked it, and it took away the feeling, the pain. And so I knew from that moment that if I didn't want to remember anything, if I didn't want to be responsible for anything, I could just drink.
She did hear about God and Jesus occasionally when her foster mom took Pam and her siblings to church.
I didn't think he cared about me. I didn't think he saw me. If you cared about me, why would you allow all these things to happen to me?
Pam had endured the hell for 8 years before finding the courage to go to authorities. Now 16 and an alcoholic, she took little comfort when her foster dad was given a 20-year sentence and decided swallowing a bottle of pills was her only chance for peace.
I needed help. I was depressed. I was anxious. I couldn't eat. Felt terrible because my brother and my sisters were being separated. And all of that, coupled with the trial from my foster father, led me to suicide.
While a failed suicide attempt earned her a brief stay in a psychiatric hospital, Pam would continue to fight depression, suicide attempts, and alcoholism for years to come.
Not drinking never crossed my mind. Like, how could I live without it? I just thought, this is how I have to live the rest of my life.
Pam's 20s would be a string of disappointments and failures. She joined and got kicked out of the Army. A marriage ended in divorce. She lost custody of her son. She got pregnant again and had an abortion. To fight the depression, she used alcohol and now cocaine. To fight her growing fears of being alone, she turned to sex.
I had a lot of rage and a lot of anger. And so the idea was, I'll get you before you get me, because I didn't trust anybody.
Her friends tried to talk her into getting help, but Pam wouldn't listen. Now approaching 30, she felt beyond anyone's reach, including God's.
There's no way I can come back from the things that I've done, the lies that I've told, the secrets that I have that nobody knows about. He knows that. There's no way.
Then one night at a party, she couldn't get drunk, no matter how much alcohol she had.
And this voice comes out of nowhere and says to me, this is your life. You're always on the outside looking in. Even in a room full of people, you still feel all alone. But I'm with you. And I was like, who is that? I didn't know that voice. And I got mad because it was the most honest thing I'd ever heard in my life. It was so true. No matter where I was, no matter what room I was in, no matter who was there, I was still alone.
Pam returned to AA and this time got sober. Even then, she refused to let God into her life. 4 years later, Pam, now 32, was on the verge of another divorce, raising a daughter, and still battling depression and her childhood fears that no one wanted her. She agreed to go to church with a friend who told her she'd find everything she needed through Jesus Christ. Sitting in the service, Pam realized her friend was right.
I want you. I did. I want you and I need you. And that day I asked him to come into my life. And I surrendered. He gave me hope because I didn't have any. I had none.
Pam says as she pored over God's word, the depression and loneliness lifted. She was also able to forgive the men who caused her so much pain as she found the freedom to move forward with her life.
I wanted nothing more than to be rid of my old life. And so the scriptures came alive to me. And I believed them, and I've studied them, and they're written on my heart. And now for me, it's alive in me. It's everything.
Today, both Pam and her husband Robert are following Christ and are happily married. As the executive director of Pro Love Ministries, she draws on what Jesus did in her life to help others feel his love and find their way.
I can't even imagine not walking in this freedom. Man, it's the best place to live. It really is. That hope that we have in Jesus Christ and knowing that this isn't all there is. This life right here is not all there is. There is more. There is more.
This life isn't even close to all there is. You know, when we go through hard times, sometimes our hearts become embittered toward God because we wonder, where were you? You know, where were you when this happened to me, when that happened to me? But when God spoke to her, he said, I was with you. I was with you. Friends, we live in a fallen world. We live in a fallen world where unfair things happen, where bad things happen to good people, where there are no explanations. We've seen it happen in just world events recently, just recently, not to mention over history. In the middle of it all, God says, I am with you. He's with you. If you have hardened your heart because of things you've gone through, things that have been done to you, people that have failed you, listen, God's with you right now, right this moment. It is not chance that you're hearing Pam's story or that you've tuned into this program. I want you to listen to what I'm going to say to you. This is what the Bible says. If any man is in Christ, any man or woman is in Christ, they become a brand new creation. Old things pass away, and all things become brand new. I don't know anywhere in the world where you get a start over like that, but what I want to say to you is your past does not have to define your future unless you decide to let it. It doesn't have to decide your present unless you decide to let it. Today, make a decision to get free. Jesus said, I came to set the captives free. Free from what? Free from the labels, free from the heartache, free from the pain, free from the hurt, free from all of the things that have tried to rob you of what God created you for. But it doesn't have to be that way. You can stop right now and do what she did. You just say, Jesus, I need you. I need you. I welcome you into my heart, into my mind, the way I think, into my life circumstances. I'm asking you to forgive my sins and to heal me. I receive the promise of eternity with you. This is what the Bible says about eternity. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for those who love him. Let him love you today and then love him back as he gives you a brand new beginning and new hope. Call if you need prayer, 1-800-700-7000. God bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.